I'm sad to say I had an Edison CEO tell me they spent almost a week preparing for a board meeting. So if we take 4 board meetings and a week of preparation, we literally just lost a month. Like, that's crazy. No one wants that. I promise you there's not a partner of my team that sits on your boards or boards out there that wants a month of time taken away from selling new customers and hitting our numbers and building new product.
Hi, I'm Chris Sugden, Managing Partner at Edison Partners and your host of Electrifying Growth. This is Sit Down with Sugden, where I share from my experiences as both the investor and an operator to help you get that next stage of growth.
Hey, welcome to another Sit Down with Sugden. I appreciate y'all making time. These are fun for me. I hope they're helpful for you. We are seeing more and more people spend more and more time with these. So we'll try and put more of them out next year in 2026. But this one's a little bit of tidbit aimed at CEOs, but as much as CFOs out there. We're knee deep or even worse in planning cycle for 2026, budgeting, forecasting. We're also in the crush of the holiday season, the end of year season. CEOs and CFOs have their work cut out for them. We know this time of year. But a couple thoughts came to mind as I was speaking to a group of our CFOs. We had our executive leadership team summit at Edison last week, and we had about a dozen or 15 CFOs in a room. We were talking about a few topics that would be too boring for the whole world to talk about. But one thing that we were sort of getting into a little bit was board preparation, budget preparation, and planning, if you will. And they all go hand in hand when we're in planning cycle right now. Planning slash budgeting becomes a bit synonymous, but also board prep. So again, this will feel a little targeted to CFOs, but CEOs could sort of deal with it as well and maybe learn a little something here if you're out there. And those who advise companies, this should hopefully help you. But a couple of things that I asked the CFOs to raise their hand on is your deck that you prepare for your board 80% or more what you run the business on? In other words, is 20% of the content stuff you're creating because it's a board meeting, or is it more than 20%? People love data and love numbers. And yes, this is a simple 80-20 rule, but I will tell you, it really is an effective way to figure out if you're doing show and tell for your boards and you're sucking out the life of your team around every board meeting in terms of productivity. And a lot of times the CFOs are delegated the board deck in smaller companies. Yeah, the CEO owns it, but the CFO is doing it. So it kind of starts with you CFOs. I know it starts with the CEO, but the point is, if you can honestly answer that question, that 80% of the materials you provide or go in your monthly close or whatever weekly reports you review with your team, then you're winning. And you're also showing you're able to spend your time doing things that aren't just show and tell. The other thing I asked the CFOs was, how much time do you spend in the board meeting with backward, or as I like to say, rear view mirror data versus the windshield, if I can use the car analogy, information for the board? And I was surprised there. I got more hands going up than I ever wanted to see that was more backward or rear view mirror facing. What I like to do as a best practice, and most of the people I work with on boards over time know that we've done this, and that is take your prior month or prior quarter and do it on a call the week before the board meeting. Get it out of the boardroom. For whatever reason, we spend this time. And if you think about it, September 30th, everyone likes to report on quarters because that's what public companies do. So September 30th was almost 60 days ago, right? 31 days in October, 20 days by the time you're listening to this, plus in November. So we're 50, 60 days in, and we're having board meetings. And we're talking about what happened in September 30th. Worse yet, we're talking about what happened in July, August, and September. So think about how old that information is. Is that a good use of your board time? Oh, but Sugden, it's fiduciary. You got to tell people what happened. Well, you've sent out the material, first of all. But what would be better is what's going to happen in the fourth quarter? What's going to happen in the first quarter? So your October and November board meeting should be fourth quarter, first quarter, even a 26 flash would be better. Here's kind of where the budget's coming together. I know everyone's nervous to do that because then they feel like it sets we're not done yet. We can't show 26. Okay, fine. Make your board meetings on a quarterly basis, no rear view mirror facing numbers. How do you do that? As a CFO, you hold a monthly call with your board. You can do it on a quarterly basis as well. On a quarterly basis, 1 week before your board meetings. On a monthly basis, just pick the time when you got the books closed. Some people are like, I got to talk to my board every month. I'm saying keep it narrow. It's a financial update. all the numbers that are already closed. One thing you do by having a cadence that's either quarterly or monthly, it's outside the boardroom. Those who are kind of financial geeks or accounting geeks like me that ask detailed questions that doesn't bore all the other board members who don't care about the topic. But you'll also get some good learning out of by asking a more detailed question that people don't want to ask in a boardroom. But now let's think about the benefit we get in the boardroom. You have 5 or 7 board members. Maybe 2 of them are really financially savvy. Everyone's financially savvy, but only 1 or 2 kind of would meet the public company definition of a financial professional director. The other 4 or 5 or 3 or 4 people are literally zoning out. They're like, their eyes are glazing over. What do they care? Are we going to make our number next quarter? Are we trending on the growth rates we expected? Are we beating budget? Are we missing budget? Are we going to meet or beat budget is really what we're asking ourselves. We already know what happened. Again, I use the rearview mirror phrase all the time with my companies. I may not win the battle with all my PE friends to say, get your financial review outside a board meeting. Now, those who are more grown up companies have audit committees, and the audit committees meet and they do exactly this. They do the rearview mirror stuff because you don't have to be a public company to have an audit committee, by the way. A lot of companies that take money from us, not all, a lot, all have audit committees. That's where the financial review that's kind of rearview mirror should be sitting. And the practice I like to do is I invite all the board members, but the audit committee members should be there. That's the audience that kind of have to review the back end facing numbers. And there's this sort of, well, it's fiduciary. I got to do it in the full board meeting. There is no rule that says that. You should review and need to review your financial performance with your board. But if you have an audit committee, let the audit committee then make the report out. You've shared all the data, but to spend cycles in a boardroom, 10, 20, 30 minutes out of a 2-hour, 3-hour, 4-hour board meeting is a lot of time for what you can't do anything about. It's all rearview mirror. As you think about your kind of 2026 cycle, both planning, getting information out on your board prep time, 80-20 rule. It goes for every department, but I'm talking to CEOs and CFOs first because you generally set the example. So if you're creating a bunch of material that you don't use to run the business, the other departments are going to copy you. And now you've got 4 or 5 or 6 executives spending a lot of time getting ready for a board meeting. I'm sad to say I had an Edison CEO tell me they spent almost a week preparing for a board meeting. So if we take 4 board meetings and a week of preparation, we literally just lost a month. Like, that's crazy. No one wants that. I promise you there's not a partner of my team that sits on your boards or boards out there that wants a month of time taken away from selling new customers and hitting our numbers and building new product. So really think about that 80-20 rule. If you want a time benchmark for each executive, if it takes you more than 2 hours, and I might even say 3 hours, okay, I'll give you a little grace to pull your board slides together, you might be taking too long. 2 or 3 hours to prepare your X number of board slides combined with the stuff you run the business from. So I'm a head of sales. I pull my Salesforce report or my pipeline report, or my RevOps person says, here's our pipeline report for this week. Let the board see the quote unquote raw material. Yes, it can be prettier, put in a PowerPoint slide, fine, but there's no reason for you to go recreate something that's something you manage the business with. So again, kind of to summarize a few thoughts for planning and CEOs and CFOs out there, 80-20 rule, 20% new material in your board deck than what you run the business with. And that 20% should be the questions, the feedback you're looking for from the board, the strategic issues you're facing as an executive member of the team. That's what that 20% should be focused on. Next, the idea of, to CFOs and CEOs out there, the prior month, prior quarter results. I personally hate to use any board time for that. And how do I get away with not doing that? How do we get away with not doing that? Have a weekly or quarterly call that's a week before the board meeting. So everyone's had the rearview mirror conversation, or at least the audit committee has, and all the board members feel good about that conversation. Hopefully that's helpful. I think there's a few rules of thumb I gave you. You might check with your own advisors or board members to say, are they comfortable first? You don't just all of a sudden pull the financials out. But as CEOs and CFOs out there, I can tell you, as someone who sat on north of 50 boards in my career, and the ones who pulled the financial discussion out, the board meetings feel like to everybody, they were more strategic, they were more productive. I never had anybody go, boy, I wish we spent more time on what happened last month or last quarter. So hopefully that helps you as you think about your planning cycle and your better board meetings, better board productivity in 2026. One additional kind of closing thought about efficiency, about your board preparation taking too much time and taking away from the business. about slideware that feels like a commercial and I got to pass a weight test, like a college term paper or a thesis. The thing that I see a lot of companies don't do is take stock each board meeting, what worked and what didn't. So that's not trying to like put an A through F grade on each executive. Were we strategic enough? Use your executive session to say, go around the table and ask a pointed question. Was our material with respect to sales and marketing, was it effective? Did it give you a sense of what we're doing well and what we're not? My goal as CEO was to be more strategic and thoughtful about our strategy with each of you board members and get feedback about our strategy for 2026. Did we accomplish that goal? Ask yourself at the end of the board meeting, leave time, first of all. But what I often find is executive sessions in these board meetings are just go around the table. As a CEO, or if you have a lead director or chairperson, you can have them do that. Frame a question or two so that the board members have to answer it, but it gives you a sense around efficiency and effectiveness. I'd say at least twice a year, make that the question. Was this board meeting efficient and effective? You say in what way? You should tell the board, here's how long each of my executives took to prepare for this board meeting. What came out of the board meeting kind of reflect that kind of preparation. And the point of even asking that question will make you as a CEO question whether or not you're focused on the right things in board prep as well. Because if you're afraid to ask your executive team that question, is our time spent developing a board deck worth it? You probably have the answer if you're afraid to ask the question. But then ask the board members as well, is the stuff we're putting in front of you answering the questions and allowing us to answer the questions I'm asking you as a board? Too many times we're not really thoughtful about getting that feedback that's really specific to whether the material is worth the squeeze, if you will. So thanks for sit down with Sugden. I think as CEOs hearing this episode, past this is your CFOs. I was a CFO for my first, 10 years of my career. So I kind of really feel empathy for those folks who tend to be go-to resources for CEOs. And a lot of times CFOs are workhorses. They're willing to just kind of keep doing what you're asking to do as a CEO. So hopefully this episode gave you and your CFO a little bit of room to think about, are we being effective in our board prep? Are we being effective in our 2026 planning cycle? But more importantly, every planning cycle going forward. But here we are in that time right now. So CEOs out there listening, pass this to your CFO and the two of you have a conversation. That's my closing thought for this Sit Down with Sugden. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for joining this episode of Electrifying Growth. For more resources, inspiration, and a look inside the Edison Partners Network, sign up for our newsletter at www.edisonpartners.com. Click on the Stay in the Know button in the top right corner of our webpage. Thank you again.